use, your car mileage, your train travel, your airline travel. The German climate advisor, a man named Schulenhuber, wants a CO2 budget for every man, woman, and child on the planet from Beijing to Berlin. So all we have to do is the UN Climate Court will then monitor all these things. Nancy Pelosi went to China and said, we need a complete inventory on every aspect of our lives in order to fight global warming. Well, those inventories they're talking about, and they're doing this now, the EPA is trying to do with industry, carbon emissions. They're trying to, everything's got to be, we're seeing this in South Africa. Some of the industries are actually giving them the rope to hang themselves with and doing voluntary reporting on their CO2 emissions.
Oh, I know. People put these carbon indulgent stickers on their cars. I give Al Gore money. I'm allowed to drive. I'm loving. I'm good. I mean, they're just total useful idiots. And as this continues, Mark, it's just so frightening to see these criminals casting themselves as our saviors. But it's great to hear you reporting that the worm is certainly turning on these guys. People should go read your reports and read the document for themselves, because it just looks like they're going for everything right now in a desperate attempt. I look forward to speaking to you when you get back with your final reports sometime next week. Mark Moreno, thank you so much, and be safe, because these are some very wicked people.
They are. Thank you very much, Alex. Enjoyed it. Thank
you, and say bye to Lord Moncton for me. Okay, well, there goes Mark Moreno, a tireless fighter for freedom. You know, Stalin said, one man dies, it's a tragedy. 10,000 die, it's a statistic. And these globalist eugenics bureaucrats have already killed tens of millions, conservatively. And they know what they're doing, and I've been around them, I've talked to them. They're very sick people. They get off on the power of doing this to people. These are really unhappy, bad people who could care less about the environment. And I mean, they've got to be faced down. And again, it looked like there was no way to stop them. Their stonewall that they were invincible was there. But as people like Mark Moreno, Lord Moncton, and others exposed them, as we exposed them, as Tim Ball exposed them, Dr. Ball, the worm has turned and the pendulum's swinging back. And the problem is these people are going to metastasize. Just like the Eugenics Quarterly changed its name after Hitler here in the U.S., just like Planned Parenthood was pro-Nazi and changed their tactics later, they're going to change their spots, and we've got to be aware of it. Now we're going to go after this break to something special. We're going to talk to the Don of Obama criminal activity, his big economic advisor, the guy that holds $35,000 a plate dinners for him. We're going to talk to Don Corleone, John Corzine, straight ahead. You're not going to want to miss this. It's InfoWars Nightly News.
What's up with these sorry politicians? Lots of bark, but when it's showtime, whimpering like little shih tzus. You want big cuts. Ron Paul's been screaming it for years. Budget crisis? No problem. Cut $1 trillion year one. That's trillion with a T. Department of Education? Gone. Interior, Energy, HUD, Commerce? Gone. Later, bureaucrats. That's how Ron Paul rolls. Want to drain the swamp? Ron Paul. Do it.
I'm Ron Paul, and I approve this message.
If you believe in this information and want to support its viral spread, go to the InfoWars store at InfoWars.com. We've got the new G.I. Joe InfoWars t-shirts. We've got the incredible Pro Pure gravity-fed filters available at InfoWars.com in the store. We've got a new DVD, Scientists Under Attack, the Don't Tread on Me flag. We've got all sorts of different bumper stickers to help spread the rebellion virally. It's all there. Wristbands, citizen rule books in every order. Order online at InfoWars.com today. The water filters, the canteens. It's all there. InfoWars.com. Welcome back. It's InfoWars Nightly News, another marathon transmission. I appreciate you joining us. You are truly revolutionaries in the development of alternative media to counter these criminals. The fact that you care enough to go to PrisonPlanet.tv, the fact that you care enough to support us, that you spread the word, that is what is making history right now as we reach tens of millions of people a week. Thank you so much. Okay, I've got a few other news items I want to hit before we get to some important film review I'm doing. And then, of course, our interview with Mr. Corzine. Risk of Israel-U.S. strike on Iran has tripled, Barclays claims. This is out of Reuters. The chance of a military strike on Iran has tripled in the past year. The senior geopolitical analyst Barclays said it's gone from a 5 to 10% to 25 to 30%. Our intel is it's not going to happen until later next year, as an October surprise for the 2012 election. And finally, we've got Moscow sees no military component in Iran's nuclear program. No kidding, it's been looked over by the United Nations. It's just a pretext to attack that country. Continuing, Napolitano on CFR. The full video is at INFOWARS.com. The head of Homeland Security, Mrs. Janet Napolitano, has said that she jokes with elitist over Drudge Report, calling her Big Sis moniker. And she says she's very proud of the fact that she's turned America into a third world cesspit. So that article is up at INFOWARS.com right now. A few of the other articles we've got, we already knew this. We're not saying Occupy, people protesting Wall Street, are bad. It's just that it was started by George Soros in the White House, and they run it. And here's a WorldNet Daily article. Occupy Nerve Center, staffed by Soros activists, professional radicals caught red-handed running so-called leaderless movement. They always said it was leaderless so they could control it themselves. And finally, I'll have to give this more next week, but Daily Mail, no more talking behind the wheel. Scientists develop system that can shut down your cell phone while you're driving. Oh, sounds good on the surface, but it's all about everything being pre-tracked and controlled in this technocratic system. And I said finally, but here is finally. We're on our own now. Cameron uses the veto for the first time to opt out of the new treaty to save the euro and give more power to Brussels. That's how countries act as firewalls against tyranny. World government is being established by the bankers of the euro right now, and they're using it to get rid of national sovereignty. And the globalist Cameron has said no in England. We'll continue to follow that throughout next week. Now I want to go to a movie review. We did Clockwork Orange, on Tuesday night, and here on Friday night, I have 8 different clips from an amazing 1964 film, 7 Days in May. Now, it's got globalist propaganda in it, but it shows how the leftists that made this were useful idiots. The evil general that wants to use the NAS, National Alert FEMA system, this was in 64 before that was set up, to take over, he has basically set up the military to use this emergency alert system as a pretext to take over. And he speaks out against the one-worlders and the New World Order. So now the idea back then was, because this was true, some generals were going to do a coup against the New World Order communists and bankers. And so they were worried back then, so they used a Smedley Butler type 30 years after he did it. The Marine Corps officer in the fictitious film playing Smedley Butler, basically, to say no to martial law and warn the president. And so that's basically what Mr. Douglas does. And so we're going to go ahead and go to those clips, but I just want to illustrate to you that they just had Dr. Strangelove the year before in 63 exposing government launching a nuclear attack on itself, basically, as a pretext for martial law and global domination. And then another film comes out a year later where they talk about generals using COG or Plan R to take over the government. And so we're going to go ahead and go to that first clip of the Burt Lancaster, Kirk Douglas, Paramount Pictures, based on the 62 novel by Fletcher Cannell and Charles Bailey II, 7 Days in May. Here's that first clip.
Lyman lovers!
So there's protesters in America. People are angry. Americans are fighting progressives, but the right winger wants to come save everybody. Of course, now it's the left coming in to supplant free speech. So again, the globalists were coming in to take over America. They knew the military was upset, so they put movies out about right-wingers using a martial law system. Right-wing, left-wing means nothing, but now, in common terms, they're actually implementing all of this, but now the left, in their own labels, is using this system against us. They've become what they warned about. Let's go ahead and go to this clip of Gene Scott's speech excerpts where they basically, well, I mean, the clip speaks for itself. Here it is.
Perhaps patriotism is old-fashioned. Perhaps love of country is outdated. Perhaps even a minute degree of sentiment to one's motherland is to be considered passé. But God help us, and God help our country, if the cynics, the one-worlders, the intellectual dilettantes ever persuade us that these things have passed us by. Because, ladies and gentlemen, patriotism, loyalty, sentiment, they are the United States of America.
So there you go. That's General Scott. I'm not a teleprompter reader. I call it Gene Scott. Another General Scott's speech excerpts. He talks about the threat of one-worlders. He's going to bring in martial law to stop the communist one-worlders. But they're not communists for the little guy. They're the banksters. Let's go to this next clip. It's self-explanatory.
Mr. President, have you ever heard of a military unit known as ECOMCON?
What?
I'm sorry, ECOMCON. ECOMCON.
This is Smedley Butler.
What does it mean?
The archetype warning them.
Abbreviations. It could stand for Emergency Communications Control. Have you ever authorized the formation of any type of secret unit, regardless of its name, that has something to do with the preserving the security of things like television, telephone, or radio?
No, I haven't.
Henderson said an odd thing to me, sir, something that, well, I can't shake quite loose of. He said they were spending more time training for seizing than for preventing.
You're suggesting what?
I'm not sure, Mr. President. Just some possibilities, what we call capabilities in military intelligence. I'm suggesting, Mr. President, there's a military plot to take over the government. This may occur sometime this coming Sunday.
So you stand by the Constitution, Jakes?
Never thought of it just like that, Mr. President, but well, that's what we've got, and I guess it's worked pretty well so far. I sure don't want to be the one to say we ought to change it.
Neither do I. I remember what Harry Truman said one day, that inside this room, the buck stops.
So again, it's the evil anti-New World Order people that want to overthrow the government using the COG media takeover arm that they'd set up to a certain extent then, but wasn't in place till the 70s. And then now that they've got it, they're saying domestic terrorist, free speech is evil. But that's how they sell it. And again, it's the archetype of the Marine Corps officer saying no. S. Smedley Butler, two-time Congressional Medal of Honor winner, he was approached during the 30s to make America basically a fascist country and take over. The point is, this has already happened through Homeland Security and the staged terror attacks of 9/11. Now they're just mopping up all the free speech centers and shutting down the final levels of freedom. Okay, let's go ahead with the presidential advisor telling the president that, hey, you know, what's wrong with the military training for this stuff?
Forgive me, Mr. President. But it's flying troops to the big cities in an alert. That seems to be not only logical, but prudent. Obviously, if the Russians struck, we'd need disciplined troops in the metropolitan areas to keep order and prevent complete breakdown.
And at 2:20 tomorrow afternoon, somebody will have thrown a switch at Mount Thunder. General James Scott will be on all 3 television networks, explaining to the people of the United States why this particular crucifixion is an act of faith.
Mr. President, what are you waiting for? Fire Scott. Close down Mount Thunder. Declare a state of martial